Making headlines tonight, Prime Minister Moxley calls for a level playing field for developing countries as she delivers the prestigious Raoul Prebisch Lecture. The Sheraton food court closed for what officials describe as maintenance. A local magistrate feels parents should pay for their children's irresponsible acts. And coming up in sports, a David and Goliath type upset in the senior women's volleyball knockout.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
I am Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. Prime Minister Mia Moxley has called on the international community to create a level playing field when it comes to fair access to markets for developing countries. She made the impassioned plea during a powerful speech as she delivered the 16th Raoul Prebisch Lecture at the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development Forum in Geneva today. Lisa Lord has the details.
Prime Minister Moxley says for many the Caribbean is invisible. But she's made it clear the islands are not dispensable and have a voice to be heard and a contribution to make. She referred specifically to the failure to have correspondent banking services because many countries across the region are seen as too small to matter to some.
It matters not that the absence of that correspondent banking will cause our countries and our regions even, and our people, to be cut off and to be quarantined just as lepers were in centuries past from a global community as we seek to buy goods and services from outside our borders. How will our people trade if they do not have access to a banking system that allows them to transmit and to pay for services and goods across the borders? It is pure, unadulterated hypocrisy. And at worst, contempt and insensitivity as to what happens to human beings who happen not to live within the borders of the developed world.
She says the imbalance in wealth and power in the global community is a fundamental obstacle to our development and must be corrected as a matter of urgency.
Shy to confront it. Middle-income countries refuse today to be allowed access to development aid and assistance, purely on the basis of arbitrary determinations of per capita and GDP formulations that bear no relationship to the reality of our lives. And even when money is promised in the midst of disasters, money promised and money delivered are two totally different experiences. We must not be naive in appreciating that the head start given the developed world to build their countries and to build out their industrial base and was done on wealth extracted from millions of people across the developing world.
Ms. Moxley also touched briefly on the possible impact of Brexit on Barbados and the island's exposure not only to climate change but financial shocks.
Our exports and our imports are a huge multiple of our economies, and often we export everything that we produce and regrettably import everything that we consume. In that context, my friends, therefore, I submit to you that we need a reorientation of trade policy that supports both global trade but local resilience.
Prime Minister Mia Moxley is only the second woman and the first person from the Caribbean to deliver the distinguished lecture. Lisa Lord, CBC News.
CBC TV8 will be carrying the full version of the lecture at 8:10 tonight. The 190 Barbadians who stopped receiving invalidity pensions, some dating back 15 months, will be getting their checks again from this month. Word of this from Press Secretary to the Prime Minister, Roy Morris. Mr. Morris says this action followed a directive from Director of Finance and Economic Affairs, Ian Carrington, last Friday, instructing the Accountant General on the approach that should be taken to restore the cancelled pension.
This afternoon, the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs confirmed that earlier today he made a follow-up check with the Accountant General and was assured that the process of reinstatement had started to have all 190 persons who had been impacted back on the roll in time for September's pension payments. It should be noted that this decision will cost the Treasury more than $177,000 per month, and that over the past 10 years, this overpayment anomaly has occurred at a cost of $13.8 million to taxpayers.
Mr. Morris says in July, Prime Minister Moxley intervened in the matter after considerable public criticism of how it had been handled, noting that she will monitor the situation in the coming weeks to ensure a smooth reinstatement.
Following discussions with the Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investments, it was decided that as the invalidity pensions relate to a particularly vulnerable section of the population, it would be necessary to put a revised policy in place. However, until the policy has been finalized, the Cabinet has agreed that those officers who are receiving invalidity pension and whose pensions were abated by the Treasury should have their pensions reinstated with effect from September 2019.
Scores of Barbadians were forced to go without their favorite lunch options today. This after the food court at Sheraton Mall was shut down for maintenance just before midday, a move that surprised many patrons and staff of the various food establishments. Lorna Jones has more.
Patrons visiting the Sheraton Mall food court this morning were greeted by closed shops and empty display cases. It was shut down as advised by the Ministry of Health for maintenance.
As there are some maintenance routines and industrial work that needs to be done on the premises, which we were hoping to do at night, but we have been informed that the timeliness of it is a priority, and we feel by closing the food court, we'll be able to get it done more expeditiously.
However, the move has come as a surprise to management and staff of many of the food establishments. One worker explained they had already prepared for the lunchtime rush when they were served notice.
Nobody ain't telling us anything. We already have all the food cooked, all the food spread there. You know, customers buying in the line. And we have to be telling the customers, like, we can't serve. The customers baffle. We baffle. We don't know what's going on. So basically, you know, it was like very confusing. We don't know if to serve. We don't know what to do.
Many patrons were left disappointed by the closure.
We work pretty close, so usually this is the place to come and get some lunch. It's a little upsetting, yes, spending money on gas coming here, but I don't know why it's shut. But I'll find something somewhere else, I guess.
Sheraton Mall officials have assured patrons the rest of the mall remains open as usual. They say the maintenance is expected to last for a day or two. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Well, in a release from the GAS this afternoon, the Ministry of Health advised that environmental health officers had been inspecting the food outlets in the mall since September 4th. Several violations of the health services food hygiene regulations had been found. The acting chief environmental health officer, Ronald Chapman, says owners were instructed to carry out necessary remedial action. It was recommended that no food be sold until the work has been completed. The ministry says it's working with management of the mall to limit any inconvenience that these closures may cause. People who have been convicted of indictable offenses will not be eligible for a license to grow medicinal cannabis. Confirmation of this from Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Dale Marshall during a meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Medicinal Cannabis. Now, during that meeting, which took place at the Lloyd Erskine Sanford Center, the 12-member commission heard presentations and posed questions to several stakeholders in response to concerns raised by the Barbados Bar Association and the African Heritage Foundation. Attorney General Dale Marshall says the legislation only affects people convicted of serious offenses.
Somebody who has been charged with a joint will not be affected by this at all. On the other hand, a person who is charged and convicted with one of the more serious offenses, then we're leaving that person out of the mix. And this is not unique to Barbados. We, in fact, talked about it earlier today and recognized that Jamaica has a similar arrangement in place for prohibition of people who've been convicted of a more serious order of things.
President of the African Heritage Foundation, Paul Simba-Rock, disagrees with this clause as he says many Rastafari have been convicted of cannabis-related offenses. He also revealed that members of the Rasta community have been approached by the University of the West Indies for such research purposes. However, Mr. Rock is concerned that while they're being engaged by the university, they could still be arrested for possession of the banned substance.
I have been asking for amnesty on arrest for possession of small amounts and cultivation of small amounts while all this determination is going on. Because I would hate, because I am not prepared to put down my liberty and my use of cannabis because of a law I haven't done for over 30 years. I'm not going to do it now. But I would hate for myself to be able to miss the opportunity to work with the university and others in the development of this industry because I remain a criminal in your society.
The topic of parental responsibility was thoroughly examined when the annual general meeting of the Parados was held recently at the Accra Beach Hotel. Over the years, Parados has been carrying out its mandate of improving parenting skills and family life in Barbados. It continues to provide high-quality programs to Barbadian families, and Director Cicely Clark-Richmond says the daycare center as well as the preschool continue to be in high demand.
Our early childhood education program provides a wide range of developmental and learning strategies, allowing each child to reach his or her full spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, emotional, social potential, while also providing parent education to support the parents.
Featured Speaker Magistrate Graveney Bannister stressed that parental standards have dropped in Barbados over the years. He believes a Parental Responsibility Act is needed.
Somehow we seem to turn a blind eye to bad behavior of children. With the upsurge in youth violence, perhaps the time is right, I would contend for a Parental Responsibility Act. Parents should face civil liability for willful acts resulting in the loss and damage to property and the destruction of property of others that should be imputed to parents.
Magistrate Bannister spoke passionately on the issue of parental responsibility.
Parental responsibility means letting children know that there are consequences for breaking the rules. Children will think twice about doing something which will land them in trouble if they know that we are going to enforce the rules. Parental responsibility also means being a parent, the person in charge. But in our new age, too often we see children are the ones who are calling the shots.
Parados also provides support and guidance to an average of 30 to 40 people per month through individual and family life counseling. Elderly Barbadians are falling prey to phone fishers. It's a situation Chief Executive Officer of Caribbean Cyber Forensic 360 Incorporated, Neil Hines, wants to make everyone aware of. Phishing is the act of attempting to acquire personal information such as passwords and details by masquerading as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. Cell phones in Barbados have been receiving calls from strange numbers in recent times. Hines, a guest on TV8's Morning Barbados, is cautioning against accepting those calls.
If you get a call and you call back, do not give any information at all. As soon as they start asking you questions that you feel unsafe with, hang up the phone and contact your local law enforcement. Tell them, listen, we are receiving calls that is asking for information and I don't feel comfortable. So that at least law enforcement then can put out a message to the general public saying, these calls are happening in the region. Do not answer your calls. Do not answer the phone with these numbers.
Barbadians will be privy to information on how to protect themselves through an information security and cybersecurity awareness seminar entitled Hackers Halted. Now, it comes off next Friday at the Courtyard Marriott. Blockchain tech specialist Roland Hagen says banks are falling prey to hackers as well. Now, he says many resort to introducing user fees as a result.
It pushes up expenses. So globally, we're looking at something like probably about, what is it, Neil? About 700 million, maybe?
Yeah, probably over 700 million.
In hacked.
So this is money that's stolen?
Money that's stolen.
$700 million?
Yeah, roughly around there. And that's a problem. So we need to secure our businesses, our banks, and individually, as we just mentioned, because otherwise we're going to be incurring these expenses.
A Barbadian charity is playing its part in ensuring access to clean water for Bahamian families affected by the passage of Hurricane Dorian. The United Caribbean Trust is donating dozens of water filtration systems. Founder Jenny Trehane is moving to have the systems on the ground in Grand Bahama.
Because of a very generous donation from Shafet, we have been able to get 50 of the Sawyer Point 1 community filters, as you said. We've connected with our American partners over in Fort Lauderdale. Elliot very kindly brought filters to Barbados in 2017, as you said, to Dominica. And when I contacted him, he was happy to be on board again. So he purchased the buckets and barrels and taps and all the equipment that was needed in Miami and got them on a boat.
Mr. Hain has connected with another humanitarian group, Samaritans First in the Bahamas. The United Caribbean Trust is also working with several pastors in the affected areas.
We will be actually focusing on working through the churches, and each church will set up the community filter in whichever church still has a building. Now, obviously, many have been destroyed, and catchment water can be used, even contaminated water can be used to filter. And so rather than it just being a personalized filter in a home, we are focusing on community filters.
Nearly 5,000 people have been evacuated from hurricane-hit Abaco and Grand Bahama. The death toll following the passage of Hurricane Dorian currently stands at 50.
While 4,800 persons have been evacuated from Grand Bahama and Abaco into the capital, NEMA spokesperson Carl Smith stressed today that the plan is not to move everyone out, but to build temporary housing on the affected islands until a permanent solution can be found.
You know, we are selecting the best sites possible. But in the meantime, the actual facilities, the structure, those are on their way to put on the ground. So it's on many moving parts, things are happening. And as soon as we are able to say that where they will be and when the facilities are ready for occupancy, we will inform the public.
John Michael Clark, chairman of the Disaster Relief and Reconstruction Committee, explains the process.
We wanted to evacuate the Marsh Harbor area, and a lot of the evacuees are in. We will put up 2 relief areas in Marsh Harbor. The areas would be one to the south of Marsh Harbor and one to the north of Marsh Harbor. And those are to get persons back quickly who would want to rebuild their homes right away. And then that temporary transition space will be no more, essentially.
The relief centers are expected to house around 4,000 persons. Clark said the committee has not decided if the housing will be tents, prefab homes, or trailers.
Well, it appears that Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has settled on a date for general elections. Now, while not revealing exactly when Dominicans will go to the polls, he encouraged them to put everything in place to ensure they are ready to exercise their right to vote. Marpin TV reports.
I am saying to you, as I said to you in St. Joseph, the clock is ticking. Ensure that everyone is registered. Ensure that everyone is registered to vote, because you will never know when that date will be announced. So be ready, ladies and gentlemen. Put oil in your lamps. Put oil in your lamps. Put on your breastplate and get ready to fight battle to defend the Dominica Labour Party and to secure the future of this country.
The Prime Minister declared that he has settled on the election date and it will be revealed to the public in due time.
I am not fearful about the elections, ladies and gentlemen. I am satisfied. I am satisfied and I am convinced that the vast majority of Dominicans have said they appreciate what Labour has done for Dominica, and especially what Labour did for Dominica after Hurricane Maria, ladies and gentlemen. And they're going all the way with the Dominica Labour Party.